Hello, everybody. This is Z.S. Caraval from ZK Research, and I'm back for another episode of ZKast. Good morning, Mark. How was your NFC Championship weekend? I guess AFC.
That was quite a game.
Well, we're just in full disclosure. Mark and I are both from the New England area, so there's a bit of a, I guess, moral dilemma on who we root for. Is it are you for Tom or not for Tom? I guess there's quite a split feeling here in New England around that. So
yeah, although I was texting with people across the country, and there's so many people pulling for him, even if they weren't fans of the Patriots. Just the idea that this guy is 43 and is going to his 10th Super Bowl is just something unimaginable.
Well, I guess it gives us hope for all of us with gray hair, right? So.
Exactly. Well, hey, Zeus, this is AI week, right? We've got a lot of AI stuff we're going to go through.
Yeah, it's funny how the news cycles kind of come and goes. There was quite a bit of AI news. I'm going to start actually with one of the more interesting acquisitions I thought was Uniphore. Probably not the most well-known company. They play in the contact center space. They actually, for those who don't know them, they're not really a ZKast vendor like you would think of a Five9 or Talkdesk or something like that. They provide a set of AI tools that can be integrated into customer service tools. In fact, companies like Cisco uses them. They bought a company called Emotion Research Labs. It's a pretty small company that does video facial sentiment analysis, right? So if you think of all the exciting things that have happened in AI, there's been a lot done in sentiment analysis itself on the audio side. So if you're on a call, let's say with your favorite retailer and you're getting irritated, a supervisor would get notified that based on the tone of your voice, you're getting irritated.
Right.
Then they can hop on the call and rectify the situation. Or ERL, Emotion Research Labs, does that for video. And they can also tell how well engaged you are. So if you think of the implications of that, one of the big things that's been a problem in the world since COVID started, obviously, is people we're spending all our day on Zoom type of meetings, and staying engaged can be challenging. But a bigger problem is from the person speaking, it's hard to tell if people are engaged because you can't actually, quote unquote, see everybody, right? But in this case, it could actually tell you if the person's, you get a little bot that maybe says that, person X isn't engaged, and you could call them up by name. Or it can tell you the emotion. So if you're a doctor and you're giving somebody, say, some routine news, but they interpret it incorrectly, like it's bad news, a little bot could actually signal the doctor and say, hey, the person's very uncomfortable with this, and maybe make a suggestion to explain it further. Or a teacher could give an indication, that certain students aren't paying attention, right? And then you could correlate that maybe to grades or things like that, and maybe call the person out. Or even in just a general purpose meeting, if the person who they're presenting gets the sense that, an indicator that somebody's not paying attention, you could call out that employee and say, well, what do you think of that? And maybe bring them back in, right? So, and one of the interesting things about this is Uniphore started off doing just, AI on data, and then they started doing AI on voice, right? So they transcription, translation, stuff like that. In fact, one of the big things that they sell is a conversational AI, so that's become a big thing. And now they're doing it on video. And I talked with one of the investors of the company, John Chambers, from Cisco fame, and I had a pretty good half-an-hour conversation with him about this. And he drew a lot of parallels to Cisco. When you think of Cisco, they started off being a company that built a network to transport data. Then it became a network to transport voice, and then it became a network to transport video. And they built this architectural framework to become the network for voice, video, and data. Similarly, what Uniphore is trying to do was become the AI engine for data, the AI engine for voice, and now the AI engine for video. And so they're developing a very similar type of kind of architectural story. In this case, because it's not a network that you build physically, you would think of it more as a platform, but trying to become that platform for all things AI. So I do think it was a pretty interesting acquisition. I think we're just starting to scratch the surface on what to do with video AI. We've done a lot with voice AI, but I think this is a really fascinating kind of industry to watch, because this is, as Cisco's GM for collaboration, Javed Khan, and his boss, G2 Patel, have both said that their vision is to make video meetings 10x better than being in person. Well, this goes a long way to doing that, right? Being able to, instead of having to physically watch 50 people on a meeting, have a video AI be able to do that. Now, I asked John where he thought this would be used as well, and Mr. Chambers said, you follow the money in these kinds of things. So where businesses are putting their efforts now is in the areas of customer service, then sales, then marketing. Those are kind of the big areas to spend for companies in the area of digital transformation. So look for Uniphore to have a big impact there. And so they're not trying to be just another kind of Me Too AI company. They are trying to put a full set of tools together. So that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and AI can really change the customer service experience. If you've ever been in a queue and the AI can actually answer a question or figure out what it is that you need, it can be a huge relief.
Yeah, well, that's why there's so much focus in this. A couple of years ago, well, in 2015, actually, both Gartner Group and Walker issued a study saying that by 2020, customer experience would be the #1 brand differentiator. And that crossover point, I remember a Five9 study showing that crossover point happened in 2018. Last year, I had some data from my research that showed that 2/3 of millennials admitted they changed loyalty to a brand because of a single bad experience. Right. So we're already seeing customer service become a pretty big decision factor on who you use. And AI is a big part of that. And I actually think that, and it was interesting talking to Chambers about this, because he was the visionary that said that the internet would change our lives, right? Change the way we work, live, learn, and play. I think AI has the same kind of impact societally to completely change the way we live, and I'm fascinated to see how it progresses from here.
And if anything, it could have an even broader impact, right?
Yeah, I think it can democratize a lot of things that maybe people in certain countries don't have services and stuff. But clearly for our era right now, Mark, AI will have the biggest transformative effect on the way we lived. Like I said, all the way back to the internet. This is for all the talk of AI taking jobs and things like that, which I think it will at the margin, it's going to create such a massive industry that I think job creation really won't be a problem here anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. What do you want to do next? There's kind of an interesting integration with Google Meet with Otter. Anyone who is in meetings a lot, like you and I, sometimes at the end of it, you've got the recording, but it's nice to get a transcription. Can you tell me about what Otter does with Google Meet?
Yeah, I love the Otter tool. I've been using it since it was a I guess since it was an early stage. Well, there's still an early stage startup, but since they were in stealth mode. Otter, for those that you don't know, go to Otter.AI. I have no stake in this company, but I'll do a little commercial for them. It is the best transcription engine out there. You can run it in the background. I'm actually running it right now, and it's transcribing this. So if I write up notes on it easier, I can run it in the background of any meeting. It's integrated into Zoom, and now they announced that they're integrated to Google Meet. So when you click recording, you automatically get a transcription of it. At first, it was a little rough, shall we say. It didn't transcribe all the words very well. It still has trouble sometimes with custom vocabulary, in certain, industries. Like it translated once Cisco's Room Kit Mini, the Cisco Room Kidney, But the one thing it does is it has the ability to go in and actually set custom vocabulary. So once it makes an error once, it won't make that error again. It'll actually voice print people too. So I can go in and tag, this was said by Mark Reed Edwards, and then the next time you talk, it'll say it was you. So it's good for multi-purpose conversations. But I think this is a case where, I used to furiously take notes in meetings, but I hardly take notes anymore at all, because I just pull up my list of Otter transcribed meetings that I can go through. I can highlight what I want. I can correct what I want. It's a fabulous tool, but now it's part of Google Meet. Google certainly has a long way to go as far as a mainstream collaboration tool. A lot of small businesses use it. A lot of schools use it, right? So if you think of the impact this could have in school for students taking notes, I'm sure you remember your college days. You could listen to the professor, or you could take notes. It was hard to do both. Now you can do both.
I actually had my first Google Meet meeting the other day. I'd used all their collaboration tools, but someone set up a Google Meet meeting, and it worked pretty flawlessly.
Yeah, it's actually, Google Meet's a better tool than most people give credit to. I think because it's just kind of the other guy there. Uh, Google doesn't do a lot of advertising around it.
Yeah.
I will say that Google in the collaboration space has bumbled their way around more than any other vendor. It seems like every year we say this is the year of Google collaboration,
Right.
and it never is. But
Yeah.
they've quietly built a pretty good product,
Yeah.
and I think for a very nominal fee, even if you're using it, want to pay for the license version, the bang for the buck's pretty good on it. And so
Yeah.
there's so many competitors out there that it's hard for them to crack that code. And actually, it's interesting that the Google had to go to Otter to get their transcription engine. You would think that if there's a company that should be able to build it, it was Google. But that I think speaks more to the quality of the AI transcript, the Otter transcription
Right.
engine. I also think that Google's learned a lesson since Kieran became CEO. I remember him talking about this once, that they're listening to customers more. They don't just assume that everybody wants to work like Google, that they will actually now build products with sort of broader enterprise in mind. So, I think
Right.
there is something.
Yeah, we spoke about Nvidia last week in reference to Intel, but can you tell us about Nvidia Drive IX and what's going on with that?
Yeah, so NVIDIA's I love NVIDIA as a company. This is one of the most innovative companies out there. When people think of NVIDIA and automobiles and the drive kit, and so the way NVIDIA goes to market is they don't just hand chips to an auto manufacturer. They build these little kits that get put in the car to do
Mhm.
certain things. And so most of their effort in automobiles has been around, on the NVIDIA drive side, has been around autonomous driving or autopilot capabilities, right? Can the car drive itself? And that's a harder task to do than most people think. You got millions of hours of simulation and things like that, but they've really done a good job of helping auto manufacturers get cars that can at least, I'm not going to say are fully autonomous, but at least can have that autopilot capability. What the new drive capabilities are is it's more driver monitoring. So if you
Mhm.
watch the video on it, it actually shows the AI engine looking at the driver's face. And so if the driver is looking down too long, it'll send an audible alert. If the driver's falling asleep, it can wake you up, right? And so this is the part of the AI powered car where you can now monitor the driver, right? If the driver's squinting, they can tell maybe there's some sun glare, right? And perhaps maybe even auto dim windows. I don't know, something like that. But they're putting a lot of work not just into making the car drive itself, but also to ensure that the driver is safe and the driver's paying attention. And so there's, how often do you drive down the road, Mark, and see people's heads stuck in their phones, right?
Right.
It'd be nice if the car could actually tell you, hey, your head has been down too long. The only It's interesting. The only sort of, I guess, trepidation I have around these capabilities is the misuse of it. If I've got so much faith that my car can drive itself, that it's going to alert me if I'm not paying attention, am I more likely to not pay attention because I'm trusting the car to tell me when there's something wrong, right? And
Right.
so it's not. And if you talk to their CEO Jensen Huang or anybody at Nvidia, they'll tell you it's not meant to do that. You still need to pay attention. But some truckers drive a long way. People drive at night and they're tired, and it can help with those things. But it isn't a replacement for not paying attention. So that's one sort of societal downside of that.
Yeah, and you read about people driving their Tesla from the back seat and things like that. I don't know that we're at that point yet.
I've thought about getting a Tesla for a while. But when people say why, it's like, well, I want to be able to watch like Seinfeld while I'm driving or something like that. So I haven't gotten one yet because I think it's one of those things that you would, as you get more comfortable with it, you would rely on it more and more. And I think that's human nature,
Yeah.
right? Especially if you're busy and you want to, maybe get on a call or, get back to somebody real quick on something. I could see that happening. And then, but the one thing and this is something to keep in mind too. There's a lot of naysayers out there when it comes to autonomous vehicles and AI powered cars.
Mhm.
And whenever a Tesla has a crash, everybody freaks out, right? And the one thing I'll tell you with all AI powered systems, I don't care if it's network monitoring, your autonomous vehicle, the barrier to entry should be better than people, right? And so if you look at the hours that self driving cars drive, or they're not full self-driving, but autopilot is on, and the rate of accidents, it's significantly lower than people driving. People are crappy drivers, Mark.
Yeah, but they
Right?
don't get the headlines when they crash their car,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
it's the Tesla on autopilot that gets the headline.
yeah. And we are way above that threshold now. And so
Yeah.
I think from a safety perspective, we're certainly headed in the right direction. And the best way that people to think about the impact that autonomous cars has is just, it's not, again, meant to fully replace the person yet, but it's made a lot of tasks hard. Look at the feature parallel park assist. There's a lot of people I know that cannot parallel park to save their life. And if you push
It's
a button,
something I pride myself on
yeah,
is being able to parallel park. Maybe that's
and
it's an old world skill now.
it is kind of. And although not all cars have it, but even lane change assist and things like
Right.
that, right? It makes tasks, that could be difficult for some people easy, and that's better for everybody. It cuts down on congestion. There's all kinds of benefits.
Yeah, and the driver assist stuff to me is if you're going on a 5 or 6 hour drive, just to not have to, grip the steering wheel and completely focus on, traffic and all that. It can make a trip easier. Whether it drives the entire way isn't the concern to me. It's just making that trip a little bit easier.
Yeah, even something like adaptive cruise control has
Hmm.
made cruise control a lot more useful. Like before, how often could you really leave cruise control on?
Right.
Because
Right.
as soon as you got close to the car in front of you, it came off. Now it'll adjust. In fact, with adaptive cruise control and lane change departure, your car almost drives itself, right?
So there's a company that I've been following for, I don't know, 25 years, maybe longer, that seems it was it almost 30 years ago. Lou Gerstner took over IBM to reinvent it, and it's been reinventing itself for that period of time, right? And they just came out with their earnings and missed big on AI and cloud. So, what is happening at IBM? This is a completely different company than it was even 15 years ago.
Yeah, the irony of IBM missing in the AI space is when you think of AI, who had the first commercial AI product?
Right?
It
Yeah.
was Watson, right? They had a playing chess. They had it on Jeopardy. How IBM could have fallen so far behind in a relatively short period of time is mind-boggling. Even with cloud, IBM was the compute company. IBM has always been the compute company,
Right?
and for them to not really have a great cloud offering is almost embarrassing. But this was a this was a miss for the ages. This was their seventh consecutive after fourth quarter earnings miss. It was also the eighth annual sales drops in the past 9 years. They've done a lot to kind of readjust numbers. In fact, in this earnings call, they gave a 2-year forecast, and the only very rarely do I hear companies giving a 2-year forecast. They tend to give 2-year forecasts when they really have bad news for the next few quarters in between. The last one I remember doing that was BlackBerry when they were in decline, right? And what they're trying to do is say, look over here, not over here. In fact,
Right.
one equity analyst I saw was quoted about IBM now they gave an adjusted free cash flow metric, which is kind of an oxymoron because it's not a true measure of free cash flow if you have to adjust it, right? So
Right.
I think they've done a lot of stuff there, right? They bought Red Hat. They're planning to spin out the managed infrastructure business, but when you peel back all those layers, it's the same IBM that we've known for the last 5-6 years, and that is a company that is so steeped in the old world that they can't get out. They can't put both feet in the new world. And something really drastic has to happen there, or this
Yeah.
trend of annual sales decline and annual earnings misses or quarterly earnings misses is going to continue. So it's like I said, it's a company that it's certainly been knocked off the pedestal as the premier IT supplier. It's hard for me to see how they get back on it.
Yeah. It's kind of sad, a big brand like that seemed to have such great technology just stubbing its toe frequently.
This is what we see all the time in tech, right? Where you've got big companies. We talked about Intel last week, right? Where they were the silicon company, and now AMD, Qualcomm, Nvidia, companies like that have come up and taken that mantra away. And it's very difficult for companies sometimes to reinvent themselves into whatever that new thing is. It takes a lot of faith. IBM really could have put both feet in the cloud world, but they had such a massive amount of business, with traditional computing, that sometimes it does take a lot of guts to disrupt yourself. And there's always a bit of short-term disruption, but you come out of the end better. And so we'll see if they can turn the ship around. But it's a pretty big ship to turn around.
So before we wrap up, we talked about football at the beginning, and I know we've got a couple of weeks until the Super Bowl, but who do you think is going to win?
The easy pick is Kansas City because Mahomes is playing out of his mind. But I think the old man's got one more good game left in him. They're playing at home. I think from just an overall storyline perspective, it's pretty cool. Tampa Bay also has the Lightning, who's got the Stanley Cup, and the Rays, who get the World Series. And so this will complete the trifecta for them too. It's too bad.
And it's a home game. It's a home game too.
Yeah. Well, they say it's the first time it's been a home game. Although the 49ers did play at Stanford Stadium in '84. That's Candlestick Park was such a dump. But they didn't really count that as a home game, I guess, because it wasn't a home stadium. But I think the old man's going to pull this one out. So the 7th Super Bowl is pretty impressive. So all right. Well, I think that's a wrap on this week. It was I think a fascinating AI week. I don't think this will be the last time we talk about AI in 2021. So on behalf of my co-host Mark Reed Edwards, this is ZKast signing off, and see you next week.